You can draw and paint this simple, adorable watercolor corgi with a pumpkin on its head. I will show you techniques and unique styles to create this beautiful artwork, which is why this video is a must-watch to improve your art skills to the next level. For this demonstration, I'll be using the Line and Wash watercolor brush set. This stamp is going to be available for free. The canvas I'll be using will be the fine textured canvas. The Line and Wash watercolor brush set comes with the postcard effect. You can choose from multiple postcard effect. As you can see, we have the sketch here, but I'm going to reduce the opacity. By reducing the opacity, we can draw on top of it to give you a nice guideline. This is perfect for people who don't feel confident drawing. And when we do create that stamp on top of the previous reduced opacity, we're going to have it on the top. So let's pick a black tone color and make sure we're on top of the layer that we need to be on. And we're going to pick the fine line pen and keep the size to around 30%. With the faint line in the background, we can now draw on top of that. We're going to first draw the corgi and then the pumpkin. So we'll go around the face first and then move to the center when we are getting to more details. And with the fur, I like to break it apart a little bit with some jagged lines. This builds a lot of character into the drawing that we're doing. Focusing on the fundamentals rather than trying to make everything so perfect. So having some spaces between the lines will give that nice effect. Now this type of style is called the suggestive detailing. Instead of outlining everything in a rigid, continuous line, broken lines and spaces can suggest shapes or textures, letting the viewers imagine and fill in the gaps. This really creates a more dynamic and engaging image, but also it provides a natural look because jagged lines and broken lines mimic imperfections and organic nature of real life. And now we'll draw the table line at the bottom here. So with this table line, I want it a little bit thicker to be more pronounced. So I'm going to increase the size to around 45 to 50% and just go just straight, leaving the middle part open for the chin. Break the lines a little bit to add some texture. And I'm going to reduce the size again to add the chin of the corgi here, just like this. This idea of a corgi with its chin on the table came from the one and only Lola, our corgi. Sometimes she's too short to climb up, so all she can do is just put her chin up to see what's going on, especially when we're on the couch or in the bed, especially when there's food. Now we can do the nose part, and we can zoom in a little bit and just do an upside down triangle with smoother lines on the edges, just like this. Now we can grab the ink, but we could go back to the reference and check off the reference. This will allow you to fill in areas with color without affecting other reference layers itself. Now you can increase the threshold by dragging it to the left, to the right. And when you increase the threshold, it will go past the lines that we have. But as you can see here, with small lines, reduced threshold, we cannot fill the entire circle out or the triangle. So around 50% is a good amount for it to be filled. Then we could do the same thing with the eyes. Make some half circles, leaving the bottom part open. But we're going to add a little bit of that cartoonish eye cheeks at the bottom here. And add some textures in the middle, just like this. Again, we can fill in the areas. You can drop the colors in and add some layers of the eyelid as well. Now I want to add some white reflections to the nose and the eyes. So I'm going to pick the eraser tool and use the fine line pen again. And we're going to start with the nose and just a little bit of the light on the right side. So the nose is going to be a little bit reflected. And we can increase the size to around 30% to add some light reflections into the eyes with my signature look. And a slight light reflection at the bottom of the pupils. And now we can focus on the pumpkin. So pick the fine line pen again and increase the size to around 42% because the pumpkin is a little bit bigger than the Corgi's head, protruding a little bit closer to the image. We're going to start from the top of the pumpkin and we'll make our way down and into the small details into the center, giving a little bit of a hook to the pumpkin stem with some jagged edges, just like this. And then we'll work to the back of the pumpkin, giving a little bit of the protruding outwards to make sure that it shows that it's in the back. And dragging all the way to the down. And since the pumpkin's broken, we wanted some jagged lines again, just like the fur we did, but a little bit more details. Give some separational details from the stem and the pumpkin itself. And now we can focus on drawing the details in the center using the tapered pen. Tapered pens enhance the depth and dimension. Also, it provides expressive lines. So we will reduce the size to around 20%, and then we'll go from the top to the bottom here. So give some details to the stems of the pumpkin. And the pumpkin is, of course, going to have some grooves in the middle, so we'll do that. Pulling upwards, just like this. And then we can work our way down. With some jagged lines again. Simple, yet a bit detailed with the centers here. So we could do some pumpkin seeds coming down with some wiggly lines or straight down. Play around with it and see what you can create with this one. And you could work on the whisker, and it's great because we're tapering off, giving that smaller tapered end. And we're going to add some shadowing effect with the tapered pen at the bottom of the chin. And now we're finished with the drawing part of the Corgi. Now we can start painting with our watercolor brushes here. So have the new layer that is going to be at the bottom of the sketch or the stamp that we made. And when we do create layers painting, it's going to be at the bottom here. And the color palettes are going to be available too, so don't need to worry. So we'll start off with the Corgi's light tone skin tone color. And then we'll move on to the pumpkin and then finish it off with the shadows. So we're going to start with the light brown tone color and use the flat brush and keep the size to around 25% with the max opacity. So we're going to start from the left side, the ears, just like this. Doesn't have to be perfect, just fill in the general area. And don't need to worry about being perfect because you want that wash to look. And we're going to leave the eyes and the nose areas blank. And then we're going to create a new layer and use the mid-tone color to add some depth here. So just focusing on the edges of the Corgi. And we can reduce the size when we're working with the ear side because it's a bit smaller. Being a bit more precise here. Same thing with the right upside of the Corgi. We're going to add some of the darker shading. And of course, don't forget the top of the Corgi's head where the pumpkin's on. It's going to be a bit more darker, so we're going to add some darker tones there too. Now we're going to move on with the pumpkin, so create a new layer. And we're going to pick out an orange tone color that we have, keeping the size to around 25. And just bringing it into the center and dragging it up and down. And the flat brush is really fun to use because it really varies textures depending on the pressure, just like how real brushes will feel. So you get this real dynamic look and feels like the real brush. Now we're going to use a darker tone color to create some more depth and just fill in the centers where the grooves will be in the pumpkin. I know a lot of people, when they do paint, feel this urge to make everything perfect. And the flat brush really works well with this because it forces you to just paint it, forget about it, and that's it. And now we're going to create a new layer and work with a brown tone color that we used for the Corgi, but a little bit darker now, and focus on the stem of the pumpkin, just like this. We can put a bit more pressure on the left side, which will make the color a bit more darker pigment. So since the light is kind of coming from the right side, I want it to be a bit more darker on the left side. And pick a yellow dark tone color to fill out the seed using the smooth wash brush. With 100% opacity, reduce size a bit to around 30% and just fill in the seed of the pumpkin that's falling down. Now once that's done, we can pick the pink tone color to focus on the ears and the mouth of the Corgi. We're going to reduce the opacity to around 65% to get that wash look and reduce the size to around 35-45%. And just fill in the ears with some pink skin tone color as well as a little bit of the mouth. And now we can start blending. Now open up your layers tab and we're going to start combining the layers to keep things a bit separate. So the Corgi's face, the pumpkin is going to be separate before we start combining them all together. We're going to use the fast blender now and make sure to increase the opacity and the size to around 37%. And all we have to do is do a quick swipe and it mixes itself really easily, giving that nice wash look while blending the two-tone colors together. Now once we have completed blending process, we're going to create a new layer and create some watercolor stain looks. So we're going to use the rough watercolor stain. So let's pick a brown tone color. And as you can see, it's going to give us the nice stain look without making any other pigments darker. So reduce the opacity to around 60% and size to around 40%. And we're going to focus on the dark areas, just like this, giving that a nice stain look without making things too dark. And also the left side of the Corgi's face, and also the bottom part of the pumpkin. And when we are working with that stain look, it's always good to go with a darker tone color when we are painting the same area, keeping the opacity to around 70% and around 40% size, and focusing on the center of the creases to make a bit more depth, adding some texture stain look to the painting. For example, the pumpkin, it's going to be a bit bright, so we're going to reduce the darkness to make that stain look pop out a little bit more. Also, don't forget about the stem. It's going to be a bit darker, so we're going to focus on the stain look being a bit darker pigment. Now to finish it off, we're going to add some shadowing effect. So we're going to create a layer at the bottom of everything that we have. Use a blue tone color that's a bit darker. Save it for you guys here. And use the rough hard edge brush now. Reducing the opacity to around 40% and the size to around 20. And just like this, filling the bottom part out. This will create a nice rough, uneven textured edges, but transparency is going to be there for the center to give that nice washed look. And there you have it, an adorable corgi with a pumpkin on its head. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and continue to paint with me by clicking on the next video. I'll see you there.